Greater Phoenix. We can tell our story differently. A new perspective. A different look. Greater Phoenix A to Z.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when this finds you. Welcome to the Greater Phoenix A to Z podcast. I am your host today, Tim Bourcet. Casey Gilchrist is not here. She will be coming back next week, so I'm here without my partner in crime, but we have a very, very fun podcast today. It is going to be a great one that is very close to my heart as an Arizona native and a music junkie. And we are recording here live in the city of Mesa at the historic Nile Theater and its owner, Michelle Donovan. Michelle, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for coming down to the Nile.
I said I was excited. I've spent many a night here over the last about 20, 25 years, and you provide a valuable service to the region, and so we are very excited for this. But for all of our listeners, Michelle, you're the owner of the Nile Theater and Coffee Shop. Please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your journey to this position.
Yeah, so I've been here 15 years now. We reopened at the end of 2009. Initially, it was just the basement, then the main room reopened, and then we were subletting the front room to another coffee shop. We took over that space in 2015, opened as a vegetarian coffee shop, transitioned to all vegan. We just recently opened Nile Records, which is across the street, and we have a small record store that features a lot of the bands that have come through here, coming through in the future. So we do everything from like shows to wrestling to we've had some weddings. We do commercial shoots. White Castle was just in here doing a commercial. We're kind of just like a big community space that covers everything adjacent to music.
And obviously here in the heart of downtown Mesa, some really great development and community, involvement. Looking around, obviously it looked quite a bit different 20 years ago than it is today. So it's really fantastic to see all of your businesses thriving. Obviously the topic for today is really music in the region. We're going to be talking to some folks later on about some other venues, but this is hugely important, and we're about to get into that now. Many Arizonans know about the Nile, but just in case, a very rich history. Established in 1924 through present. Could you give us a brief overview of the iterations of the Nile over the last 100 years?
Yeah, so it started off as, a playhouse, then a movie house, and then it's been everything from a dress factory to a church to a music venue again to a church again. Its roots are in entertainment. It was one of the first air-cooled theaters in the entire state, and was kind of a domino effect in the region. The building cost $200,000 to build back in the 20s, and that's kind of set the standard for a lot of other theaters that were opening across Phoenix and all of Arizona, the Orpheum, same builders. So it's had its ups and downs. It's been notorious for being a music venue in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then when we reopened it, we really worked hard to establish a mutual respect with the community. And I feel like we're there now. We just were designated a historic landmark last year. We redid the facade in, I want to say 2018. So now it's kind of like a beacon of like the history of downtown, because a lot of them are covered up with stucco. So we feel that we play a very important role in the culture of Mesa, and the building has for the last 100 years.
Absolutely. You brought up a good point about it being one of the first air-cooled buildings. In one of the articles I read, I think most people think of an actual unit, an air conditioning unit, but I believe in the article it discussed how it was actually almost like a shed with ice and fans, and it was kind of an early swamp cooler, if you will. Is that give or take?
Like dry ice down in the basement. There was a tunnel that would connect the two basements and then back upstairs. So you'd have giant fans blowing on the ice, and it would circulate throughout the building.
Incredible to think about. Not over 100 years, but almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, you just mentioned something, and, I wanted to bring that back up. It's rich history. Arizona is a new state, so anything that is 100 years old is Pretty, that's significant. And so you talked about the historic landmark designation. Could you maybe tell our listeners how that process went? What did you go through in order to attain that?
It's kind of been a process because when we first took over the building, it was covered in stucco and it had one of those heavy colonnades that was put on. I believe in the 80s, the city wanted it to be a more walkable space. So they put on these colonnades to provide shade for pedestrians down here. So we applied for the facade improvement grant. We received it. It was about 1.5 years, 2 years of construction, ripped off all the stucco, exposed the original brick, and we tried to harken it back to the 1920s as close as we could get. So from there, we just kind of sat on it for a little bit, and then we started the historic landmark process before the pandemic. Then the pandemic came, stopped all progress whatsoever, and then last year I reapplied. You have to get approval from the neighbors. There's certain like benchmarks you have to make with the Historic Preservation Society. City Council then votes on it, and then ultimately we were granted the local designation.
That's great. And you said that provided for a grant of sorts. That was
we did
one of
not
the key...
get a grant.
Oh, okay.
The grant was for the facade improvement.
Gotcha.
So now our next steps are we turn 100 in September. The building does. And we want to get a replica of the original marquee that was on the building. So we're going to take this, continue to try to restore the outside as close as we can to the 1924 iteration of the building, and then apply for national registry.
That's great. And now, again, as you said, this is really known as a music venue, but as you hit at the top, that you have all kinds of events. I believe you said wrestling. I'm a big pro wrestling fan, so that's music to my ears. You said weddings, commercials, any other type of events. I know that you guys will bring in artists, things like that, but just what other type of events? Anything
we
fun?
We have like a finger skateboard event, which I remember when I was little, I did not understand that there was a whole subculture that still existed, and it packs out, and they have these really ornate parks, they call them. They bring them in, and they're beautiful, and you just have like hundreds of kids fingerboarding for hours on like a Sunday morning. That's like one of my favorite ones because there's a lot that is adjacent to what we do where the people that come here have these other hobbies or whatnot. We do a record fair once a year, at least once a year. We started that way back, and we'll have up to like 26, 30 record vendors, local collectors, stores, whatnot, and that brings out a good chunk of the community to like thumb through vinyl all morning. We do vegan pop-ups. During the pandemic, we did the vegan drive-through, so everybody was shuttered. So we put together a website where you could order food from all these different vegan restaurants and small businesses. We would pack it all up in one bag, and you would just drive up, and somebody would run it out to your car. So we do a little bit of everything. That's
great. And that's a good transition because you've mentioned the coffee shop. We were currently upstairs above the coffee shop. But we always like to promote local, businesses, and everybody loves a good coffee shop. Could you maybe go in a little bit more on the coffee shop? You said all vegan. Started vegetarian, now all vegan.
Yeah, it's 100% vegan, everything in there. We have breakfast and some lunch items, full coffee bar. It's open 7 days a week. We do shows in there as well. We build out a stage. It's got full sound and lights in there as well. So once we're done with coffee, bands roll in. It's a completely different environment. We did Amigo the Devil in there one time. Wow. Donovan Malero's played in there. So it's another multi-purpose space. And we just got a vintage photo booth put in. So you can get a black and white like photo booth type of picture of you and your friends before a show. It says the Nile on it.
Very cool. Yeah. So you can come in, you can get some vegan food, take the picture, and then go to a show.
Yeah.
All one-stop shop.
Yes.
Okay, now we were talking before this. We both obviously have been probably to a lot of the same concerts, it sounds like, but been here numerous times. Just a fun personal one. What are some of your personal favorite shows that you have booked here or attended just over the years? Anything that really sticks out? So
when I was a kid, I would come here because I'm not as old as this building. So there was a period of time where I was not in charge of this place. And some of my favorite shows would be like Saves the Day, played upstairs. There's like nobody here. I still have that shirt. There's like a million holes in it. or it seemed like the Ataris and Newfound Glory were
Yep.
like the house band for a while, and they'd be in the basement, and it'd be like way over packed, if you will, but you would just leave here soaked, and it was the best. It was different back then. Like, it was like a badge of honor to be bruised and sweaty.
I'd have to say my favorite, very similar, my favorite show would be, I think it was like July or August of 2002, Under Oath, Zayo, and a little band called Unearth, who is fairly new, coming through and being down in that basement for 4 hours, completely drenched by the time we walked out. And it was top 5 show I've ever seen. I mean, it was just, it was incredible.
That's something that, I don't know, I think it's lost on some people. We provide a very tangible experience, right? We don't have a barricade unless the band wants it. The basement is a basement in a 100-year-old building, so set your expectations to that. But you're not going to get that anywhere else where it's like you're feet away from the band. The band's walking through the same space as you.
Well, and it's generational at this point, because I was here a few months ago, 21 years after, to see Zayo again in the basement. And it was just funny to think that it's literally generational that some folks come here and go to the shows. But just incredible. And I feel like this has always really been a good venue, especially 20 years ago, for some of the more alt genres. And this has always been kind of a metal, hardcore, punk, emo. You've really provided that. And most of those bands were coming through. This is where they were going.
Yeah, and it's neat to see them still coming through. A lot of them are doing like 20-year anniversaries, and like Get Up Kids were here last year before, and I love the Get Up Kids. And it's like, holy crap, now I get to book them and see them in this space. And I don't know. It's neat. And then you have people that come by are like, oh, I used to come here when I was young. Now I'm dropping my kids off. And there's not a lot of venues that have the longevity. Yes, there was like that period of time where it was closed down. But, I mean, we're going on 15 years now, and fingers crossed we're here another 15 years. We lease the building, but we do all, like, the facade and the historic landmark designation. That's all us doing that because we understand and appreciate the history of this place and want to protect it for whoever comes after us.
Absolutely. And it was interesting over the last few days when I've been talking to GPEC staff and people in the GPEC network, and there's, when's that? What's the next podcast? I said, we'll be out at the Nile, and a lot of our people are East Valley folks, Mesa folks. And so it was interesting. I'm 39, and I was speaking to a lot of folks that were in my age range, and every single one of them. I was at that show this year. I saw this band, 5 times there. And so it's music brings people joy, especially shows. Yeah. And so it's always cool to see that tie in, and especially with your focus on the community and on engaging with that community. I think it's incredible what you guys are doing. Now, you talked about the next 15 years, and just kind of a last question here for you. Any major plans or thoughts in 2024 moving forward? You guys have been very busy. You've been doing a lot, but anything in the near future that you're looking forward to for these establishments?
Yeah, so we opened up the record store in October, and we're already going to upgrade it to a larger space. Same green belt, but across the hallway. We're moving in there in May, so it'll be larger, and we're going to do more like meet and greets and stuff over there. We took over the Mesa Farmers Market.
Oh, very cool.
So now the Nile owns and operates a Sunday Farmers Market with a bunch of local vendors right across the street from here. So we just want to continue our footprint in the community and make sure that Mesa has all of these things, because for whatever reason, it's always been deemed sleepy and we're always a little bit behind. And you have all the downtown Phoenix venues, and we're just kind of an outlier, right? And people think of Mesa being so far, but it's come such a long way. We have a bunch of breweries and really great restaurants, award-winning restaurants now, like Espiritu and Worth Takeaway and Republica Empanada. And so we want to make sure that we provide the infrastructure to have these shows still here, because shows bring a ton of foot traffic to downtown Mesa and put a ton of money into the economy and other businesses. So our focus is like continuing to bring better shows. We are going to celebrate our 100-year birthday. Like I said, we're going to try to do the marquee. We have a fest that we do in September. We're going to try to do a couple other like bigger concert type of events just to draw attention to the fact that it's been 100 years.
And folks can take the light rail down here.
You can,
so if you're in Tempe, Phoenix, anywhere, you want to jump on the light rail, come on down, have a beer, have a meal, and see a show. Seems like it's pretty easy. Easy path.
We're right between two stops. You have no excuses. So
I fully support that. So for listeners who want to support this fantastic venue, please check out the niletheater.com for upcoming events and shows. We will be sharing links to all of the businesses that Michelle mentioned. You've got a great coffee shop downstairs, record store, farmers markets. We will post all those. And most importantly, Michelle, we greatly appreciate you making the time for us today and providing such an intriguing local story for the incredible music scene in the Valley. Again, just from one music junkie to another, I appreciate you and everything you've done. And we just thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for coming.
Once again, thank you, Michelle Donovan and the great team at the Nile Theater for part one of the All Things Music podcast. We are about to start part two, sitting down with the great Charlie Levy, who is the founder of Stateside Presents and owner of Crescent Ballroom, and who has had a hand in many, many music venues in downtown Phoenix. Charlie Levy. Charlie, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Hello, Tim. Thank you for having me on this big time, huge podcast that you host. Are you like the Larry King of the 2010s, basically?
I try to be of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council and economic development organizations, but we're going to jump right into this, Charlie. When we talked about internally about a music podcast, I said, I'm going to hope and pray that we can get him to talk about a few minutes because you have had a hand in many, many venues and concerts and all kinds of things in the Valley. And so let's start off. You are not an Arizona native, so let's start from the beginning. What brought you to Arizona?
Sure. I'm from the New Orleans area, and I came out here to go to Arizona State University.
What a smart man. What a smart man.
I know.
And then what brought, New Orleans, obviously one of the best musical capitals, in the world. So did you take some of that? What drew you to really getting involved in the local music scene here when you came for ASU?
Sure. So I, growing up in that area in New Orleans, we used to go to concerts and clubs every weekend to go see bands. So obviously when I moved to Tempe, I did the same thing. And that was kind of the era of Long Longs and the Jim Blossoms and Dead Out Workshop and One and
Meat Puppets.
I wasn't cool enough to hang out with the Meat Puppets in downtown Phoenix at that time. Because I was 17, 18. And I needed to get a job to get in-state residency. And so I worked for, long story, but there was a job opening at ASU for a student concert director. And I applied for it and luckily got it and was just hooked because I already loved going to see live music, and then having a job in live music was awesome. It really hurt my grades because I just decided that this is what I wanted to do and work way a lot more harder on the bringing in shows to ASU and working on shows than I did my schoolwork.
And Charlie, don't worry. Most Sun Devils have at least one thing in their undergrad that prevented them from studying properly. So I'm grateful for you slacking in undergrad because you've provided me and so many others so much joy. So you're promoting for ASU, doing the college campus thing where a lot of good music promoters and owners really stem from. So after that, did you get out into the kind of the greater Phoenix region for more promotion?
So I started to work for Evening Star, Danny Zalisco.
Yep.
And I started off very part-time. I started to buy talent, and I realized I was not cut out to work and lose money for somebody else. It just wasn't my cup of tea because I felt really bad when I'd book a show and it would lose money and lose Danny's money. So anyway, I went back to school, got my degree. And then after I got my degree, I realized I needed to start making money. And the one thing I knew how to do was book shows. And I kind of fell backwards into a little bar called Nita's Hideaway, which is where the Tempe Marketplace is now. It was a little 200-seat room. And we asked Nita, who was a rodeo queen, if I could start having music there. And it was one side was a junkyard with a junkyard dog, and the other side of it was a adult bookstore, and then behind it was it was where the carnies would hang out during the off season, and that was where I started to book bands there, and a lot of bands played that little Nita's Hideaway Club.
When the movie is made of your life, this is going to be a great scene. I can't wait to see how this scene is played out.
And artists now have pretty nice backstage accommodation. I mean, if you go to the Van Buren, like I could live in the backstage of the Van Buren. And at the time when bands would come, they're like, "Where's our dressing room?" Like, well, just go to the adult bookstore. There's a bathroom in there. Use that. So that's how it all, that was it. And then at some point we ended up getting an Airstreamer, a used Airstreamer that didn't, that had flat tires, and that was when we really stepped it up. Yeah. That's
incredible. What a good story. Now that was,
it brings back memories of and a lot of those bands were, John Mayer played there, and, Death Cab for Cutie. I mean, bands that have gone on to be really successful. I have to see them and be like, yeah, they remember.
Yeah. We're going to save that for a few minutes because I have a few of those. Thanks to you, I've had, front row to bands that were playing 300-person venues to 2 years later headlining Coachella. So, always a good thing to have. So you're doing that now, here at GPEC, obviously, good development, good community is hugely important. Mid-2000s come, Great Recession comes, downtown Phoenix really takes a hit, and I always say that there were really a couple of key things that generated the redevelopment and kind of the vitality of downtown Phoenix. The music venues, which we're about to get into because you're behind a couple of them, ASU really moving downtown, and really, Roosevelt Row, just building that culture and that community. So explain how you got to the point, because Crescent Ballroom is, that's kind of the crown jewel in my opinion. Explain how you got to that point to opening Crescent Ballroom.
So sure. So when Nita's ended up going away because of Tempe Marketplace, I started to be just a concert promoter. Like Eden Star would rent out venues across the city. And I realized that I need to have my own venue to really put, my thumbnail, my vision in place, and, not renting out someone else's room. So I was looking for a very, very long time. I was living down on basically Roosevelt and 4th. And I passed the Crescent building on a walk one day. I was like, this is great. Very long story, but it was owned by this lovely lady named Triptacabra as an investment. And she had some sideways dealings with some of her tenants. And I called her up, and she was living she moved from Phoenix, and she was living in San Diego. And I had a great advice from my old friend, Michelle Savoy. And she said, fly out and meet her. Don't do it over the phone. So I flew out. We had a really big meal with her family. We talked for hours. We wrote down on a napkin what can I afford to pay for the building. And on the napkin, she sold me the Crescent.
So literal back of a napkin calculation.
For real. And I remember going to my attorney and like taking the napkins out. I'm like, you got to drop a contract like this, and laid it on his desk. True story. And she is a lovely lady, and she really took a chance on me, and was basically, what can you do to what can you afford? And she worked with me. So thank you, Trip.
That's fantastic. And obviously we'll do a quick plug for Crescent Ballroom, a good, incredible music venue, but also you got the Cocina, you got great food.
Thank you, Chris Bianco, for that.
See, I knew Bianco was tied into this too. And let's just say hypothetically you're married to a vegan. Crescent Ballroom's a great place to go because you can get vegan food and you can get non-vegan food. So just personally, I appreciate that aspect.
Thanks, Angela. Angela, my she's a part owner now, and she is the vegan in the operation who makes sure we have good vegan food, so she can eat.
Vegans valley-wide are very grateful for those burritos and nachos. So that opens up, and I know that was right really when I had moved downtown and really experiencing and enjoying that. And we'll get to some of the shows, but then you obviously progressed. You kind of had a tiered system, if you will. So then a few years later, Valley Bar, a more intimate, and then Van Buren, the big boy. Kind of explain how you got into those, because again, 3 very different venues of different sizes.
Sure. So Crescent, I knew that it would do decent with us bringing in national acts. That's what we've been doing, and it was such a great experience opening it up, and such a fun team. And our offices were located at 130 North Central, which is the building Valley Bar is in. I was with the landlord one day, and I go in the elevator, I'm like, "What's in the basement?" And he goes, "Oh, it's where my dad keeps a bunch of storage." I'm like, "Can we see it?" He's like, "Sure." He has the key because you couldn't go down there. And I walked through it. It was just a bunch of junk laid up, like floor to ceiling crap, basically. And I looked at him. I go, "Can I rent this?" That was it. I was like, basement. This is a great place for a music venue, and that was it. And I was like, let's do it. Let's do a venue. And at the time, I was noticing a trend where a lot of the bars, restaurants, venues were either, I think, a little bit taking too much from a Portland, Denver, steel, brick, or like kind of Southern California, San Diego vibe. And it was like, let's make an Arizona bar. Let's make it all about the Valley Bar, Rose Room, color palettes of, yellow for the sun. All the drinks are Arizona politicians. We really, if you really go in there, the Winnie Drudge story, really try to push that this is in Arizona, a Phoenix. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Arizona. It's Phoenix. It's a Phoenix bar. The Winnie Drudge story is Phoenix,
Yeah, I believe
all the
at
politicians.
the time, Congressman Gallegos spoke for about 2 years straight about his drink at your bar. That was like a key point for him.
So, that was it. We wanted a Phoenix bar. And so that was it. And it's and then we had that level that was below, Crescent, more of a smaller club. And it's been great, and I'm really proud of the design and how it's a Phoenix bar. Like, obviously it's called Valley Bar.
Yep, and I love it because it's a block away from the office. So anytime we want, we can just cruise right up there. Nice intimate setting, but still getting some. I know I was looking up some of the concerts, some of the venue concerts there over the last, and they were selling out so quick. Up and coming rappers and DJs and cool bands, and so it's just it's been an incredible journey there. But now and then the last venue you've really been had a hand in was Van Buren, which I think almost every one of our listeners has heard about. Can you just give us a little backstory on how that got up and running? Because that's a major venue.
The Pat Catelmi and Jim Kirkendall bought the building, and a couple of buildings around the block. And we met with them. Great people to work with, and it was just a logical next step to get into that 2,000 seat club. I thought there was a big need for it. I was excited about it, and like anything, to make it world-class venue for the artists and for the people that come. And, that's basically it. They were great to work with. They worked with us to make sure that, it would be successful with the TIs and such, and historic, and got my friend, Patch and Clark to help with the design, and away we went.
And if you remember, GPEC,
and obviously.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to say our 30th anniversary, our Greater Phoenix is Poppin' was held at Van Buren. It was a no-brainer, and it was one of our most successful events in our 30-year history. And we had over 1,000 people there, and they absolutely loved it. It was such a blast.
Super proud of how that came out. Adaptive use, old Ford dealership, it's like the Dudley Dud dealership from like 1920 something. It was really fun to put that together. It was challenging to take that old building and make it a country venue, but I thought it came out pretty good.
Oh, it's a beautiful venue, good food out front. I mean, again, everybody we talk to, here in the Valley and statewide, they absolutely love it. And it's just I've put so much money into your venues. I have spent ample amount of money. But it's worth it because, as we were saying, to go back to Crescent, you have such an eye for I think that promotion booking side is so important, right, to these venues. And I always make the joke of, Run the Jewels, a great hip hop duo of Killer Mike and LP. They come out with their first album in 2014. They do a tour. They open at Crescent. I was there. There's about 250 of us.
That was a great show. I was there too.
Singing and rapping and sweating and having a blast. And then, a year and a half later, they're headlining the Lost Lake Festival and then it was Coachella. So they go from, and they were established rappers, but, they go from filling 250 person venues to, literally 100,000 people at, these worldwide festivals. And I, as much as I joke, that is a key memory for me is that Run the Jewel show. And I know so many music fans in the Valley have that story. As you were talking about Death Cab, John Mayer, and your older venues, many folks have that here for, Valley Bar and Crescent. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you can't, it's like saying, which one of your children do you love best, but what is one of the shows, not Run the Jewel, since we just talked about it, at any of your venues, what's like the show that you are the most proud of, and or what was your favorite band that you booked that you got to see?
Oh man, you cannot.
I
will not. It's always cool when there's someone that played there and then, like you said, headline Coachella, and you're like, I cannot believe, that 21 Pilots played, whoever it is, Deza played there, right? I can't believe that Tyler, Childress played at Valley Bar, Billy Joe Armstrong played at Valley Bar. So I think that's really cool that those bands, that's a fun experience. But as far as me, that's a tough one. I really liked, usually I'm not really, I'm watching so much that's happening, but it's hard. I wish I could think of something right away.
Well, and I remember you telling me a story about Lizzo, because remember, she played the Van Buren after her Coachella set, and this was months after, and obviously it sold out like immediately. And didn't you try to book her previously? Was that, did I have that story right? I remember you trying to book Lizzo, or I just remember you mentioning.
The tickets were on sale at Valley Bar. They were, and we had to, unfortunately, that show did not happen. But she almost played Valley Bar.
But then, a year later, it's selling out, and now she's doing arena tours.
Yeah.
Man, what a good. Well, we've had you for a few minutes here. I appreciate your time, Charlie. Again, I know you hate praise, and I'm glad that this is on a podcast because I can't see you squirm on screen. But you have provided a great example of how to do it properly, how to support artists, how to support the community. And again, I appreciate you taking some time to chat with us to really show why, in my humble opinion, and as a man who spent a lot of time near New Orleans when I was in the military, Phoenix has a great music scene, and you are
it really does, and it's gotten better and better and better, and more people are going to see live music, and that makes me so happy. And obviously I'm the one on your podcast, but there's, dozens and dozens, not hundreds of people that like put these venues together and work there every day, that really make it special. I always tell my whole staff that if I had I'd be fired after a week. If I worked in our kitchen, I couldn't handle what they do. So, I mean, a lot of kudos has to go to, our teams that put it together and the artists that play there. But the people of Phoenix have just been such, the music scene has just grown and grown and grown, and kudos to them.
Yep. And for all of our listeners, we will post these links when we post the podcast, but make sure you support these venues, most importantly, and the workers there and the artists at Crescent Ballroom, at Valley Bar, at Van Buren. We'll post all those. Please take a look at the upcoming tours. There is a lot of acts coming through and some really, really fun shows over the next few months and throughout the summer. So again, with that, Charlie, I greatly appreciate you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for providing some of this fun, colorful insight into your history here in the region. So with that, sir, we really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Tim.
Once again, thank you to Michelle Donovan and Charlie Levy for joining us on the Greater Phoenix A to Z podcast, and thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Do me and our guests a favor and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. And if you're so inclined, please rate us 5 stars and leave a comment. To keep up with what's happening in Greater Phoenix, please follow GPEC at Greater Phoenix on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Until next time, be safe and well. Cheers.